Hello and welcome back to Tips of the Trade by Somms for Somms. We're back again for the October edition, and those of you who tuned into the September edition looking for Chris Hoel, well, we had a little surprise, but this month we're making it up, and the man is here himself today. So we've got Chris Hoel, former French Laundry Somm, now Sudaraj, and we're happy to have him here. And so let's get started. Chris, tell us a little bit about, who you are, where you came from, and how did you get to Tips of the Trade, the pinnacle of your career so far here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably starting way back when I caught my bug. I had opened up a copy of Wine Spectator magazine, and there in the kind of right-hand column in the beginning of the magazine, there was something called The Grapevine. And in there was kind of industry news. And I remember seeing a photo of Joe Spellman, and he had just passed his Master Sommelier exam. He was working at Charlie Trotter's at the time. And at the time, I just kind of started at a country club called Belle Rive in St. Louis. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to become a Master Sommelier, and I want to work at one of the best restaurants in the United States.
Yeah, Joe's the man. That's
he
great.
Is the man.
Yeah.
So lo and behold, that's where the journey started. I had come off of a finance degree at Missouri State University that I never ended up using for a variety of reasons. One in which, in 1996, when I graduated college, it was a pretty saturated market for finance people, and so I just really loving this wine thing. There was something to it that really held my attention. And so I spent the next 20 plus years following that in one form or another, going from Belle Rive Country Club and kind of exhausting all of my possibilities and learning that I could do there. And my next move was to Faust at the Adams Mark Hotel, in which I worked under Bob Cable. That's why I went to go to the Adams Mark, was specifically to work underneath him. He was the man in St. Louis. Bob Cable was by far and away my largest mentor and life coach for many, many years, well past when I didn't work there anymore, and he didn't either. I then went from there to several restaurants in St. Louis, Clayton, the Seven Gables Inn, and one of my last great ones was a restaurant called Monarch, this beautiful restaurant and wine bar, which I had the most liberty that I'd had up till then, and created a wine list of about 650 selections, and was really at the top of my career in St. Louis. And almost on a dare, I got asked to apply for a position that was opening up at the French Laundry in Yountville. And so this was early of 2008. And so I did, sort of begrudgingly, oddly enough. And I got a call. And I got another call. And I remember a few interviews, over the hands-free in the car on the interstate while it was snowing in St. Louis. And from that first call to the last interview by Thomas, I was working at the French Laundry in about 2.5 months.
All right.
Yeah. So.
Then you had an extended stint there by Sommelier standards.
I
right?
did,
Yeah.
yes. I was there for 4 years. I thought I was actually only going to be there for 2 years. I really fell in love with the French Laundry, and you could be there for 10 years and still be learning. It's one of those types of places, as you know.
Absolutely.
And after 4 years, I'd come to the conclusion that, I was ready to go on to my next chapter. And I had a lot of discussions with Thomas about this topic, and right about the same time, I got tapped on the shoulder by Sudaraj, and he gave me a glowing recommendation, and I've been with them for a little over 2 years now.
Great. So now, Sudaraj, explain to our people kind of a little bit what you do now and how the French Laundry led you to this position.
The great thing about Sudaraj, and what I love about it the most, is I can take all of those years as a sommelier and apply them directly to the position that I have now. In a lot of ways, we are personal sommeliers to our clients. So we are a retailer at the end of the day. We sell wine, but we do it a little bit differently. We don't have an online presence that you can troll through, and we don't have a store that you can walk into. So we decided that there's individuals out there that want to learn and want to have people help guide them and create their collections and sellers. And it's all over the board, from the very high end to people that get mixed cases to learn. We call them homework cases.
All right.
And it's a lot of fun. And in a lot of ways, those same trying to figure out the preferences of your guests at the table is the exact same thing that I do. But now I get to have a long-term relationship with those clients instead of very short transactions.
I was going to say, obviously, working with these high-end individuals, you must have had some great experiences in the laundry. You know, when you get in there with the big fish, and all of a sudden, you know, you realize, wow, this isn't. There's commas on the list, like you said, and this is for keeps. How did that transition from, say, St. Louis to that? You know, how did you deal with when that started happening on the floor?
You know, I remember my first couple of weeks at the laundry, and I was very hesitant to really recommend anything over $150. And you slowly get more and more comfortable with it. And, you know, the French Laundry list is an amazing list. I was underwater for the first 9 months, no doubt. The pace is so fast, and the amount of money that people would part with for these wines was just staggering, you know, in the tune of, you know, $20,000, I think, was the most expensive bottle that I sold. But after time, a month goes on, and that little benchmark that you have for price goes from 150 to 250 to 350, to where by the time I left, you know, there's a lot of little things that you can do as a sommelier to try to figure out where you're supposed to be, which is very important, because you don't want to overshoot, of course. But you don't want to undershoot anybody either, because the clientele that come there are very well heeled, and maybe they're looking for a $4,000 bottle of wine. And if you recommend, you know, an 82 blah, 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 and it's only $1,000, you've actually offended them.
So what are some tricks as far as like sizing up somebody at the table to figure out, you know, where they want to go, whether they're legit or whether they're just, you know, like say in Dallas, a $30,000 millionaire?
Yeah, you know, it's in this day and age, it's getting harder, because you have people that walk in the restaurant that look dirt poor and spend the most. So I don't have any envy for those sommeliers that are trying to pull this off now. But for a long time, there was a couple of things that, you know, you look for. You know, is the fabric frayed on the cuffs for the men, or there are a lot of scuff marks on the shoes, both women and men. You know, jewelry is an easy thing, but it's also an easy thing to fake. So for me, it would be, you know, how they spoke to you, and you could kind of ascertain and derive certain, you know, demographics about them. And then you start giving them choices. And maybe you give them, you ask them what they like to drink, which is the best thing to do. Because if they're like, oh, well, you know, we had 82 Latour the other day, you're like, oh, awesome. Well, we have the 61 on the list. Maybe that might be something that you're interested in. Or we have other 82s on the list. Maybe if 82 is a vintage that you're familiar with. So you got to be able to pick that ball up and just go with it, not blink, not, you know, react like, oh my gosh, I'm talking about, you know, really expensive wines. And I think it was Paul Roberts that said very early on, he goes, the only person that's uncomfortable talking about money on expensive bottles is you.
Yeah.
They're not uncomfortable.
Right, obviously. So. Yeah. Well, I think, you know, one of the things you point out is that just ask them straight up, what do you normally drink? You know, and that's something we try to dance around sometimes, but that's maybe the best way to get to the source and that comfort zone, and then you can really work from there.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Some other things. We had talked a little bit about education, and you know, it's one of the things that is never ending in this business, and as you progress, you're still doing it constantly. What are some techniques that you've used in the past and some programs that you put in place that have been successful for your education as far as staff and also now with your clients?
Yeah, education is very important, and at the, you know, the heart of what a sommelier is an educator, not only to the clients and the guests in a way, but also to the staff. I think education is very, very important. I've always made it a very important aspect of my job wherever I was. So much so that in St. Louis, I actually started a concept called the St. Louis Wine Clinic, which is still around. And it was to help sommeliers at the time, but grew because there's a lot of people that want to learn more about wine, and just cracking a book can be pretty boring. You can put yourself to sleep very quickly. Just crack terroir sometime, and you'll be asleep in 10 minutes. Some of the things that I would do is, you have to do it daily. You have to do a little bit every day. I think it's like cramming for an exam. If you wait until the end, then it's too much information to put in. So that's where lineup comes in. You do a little bit of something every single day. And I used to split it. Something was about one of the wines by the glass, even if it was a review. Maybe it's going a little bit deeper now to that particular wine, that particular producer, and then it's something off the bottle list. And I felt that those two things armed them for the night. But it stayed with them. You can't do these long lineups where you're talking about too much information. And then I would also do a once-a-month master class where we would take a region like, let's talk about Tuscany. So we're going to talk about all the different kinds of wines that are applicable to us and our restaurant. You don't try to teach wines that aren't on the list. You're not an Italian restaurant. You try to give them the benchmarks. So you talk about, here are the great recent vintages, here are the great producers that are traditional, here are the ones that are a little bit more modern, that maybe mimic California Cab. These are the ones that are actually blended with Cab, and that. And you keep it very succinct, and so that your best, captain, your most knowledgeable wine captain learns something, all the way down to someone, maybe the hostess decided to show up, and she's able to keep along that whole time because you're not overshooting it.
No, and that's one thing that we tend to think, we're being repetitive, but turnover in restaurants is such that there's always somebody new that needs to learn about those BTGs again, and then by the time you do it, you've changed them, and it just never stops.
And that's true. I think in a restaurant where you have a sommelier, the information that you convey to your staff about the wines by the glass is really the most crucial, because when we get into the bottle list, that's where I come in. If they're going to have to field a question, more than likely it's going to be on that. If someone asks them the difference between the 09 and the 01 Roté Charme Chambertin, they're not going to try to answer that question. I can come up and answer that question. But if they're asking the difference between the two California Chardonnays on the list that are priced differently, well, why are they on the list? More than likely, one of them is unoaked and the other one is oaked, and they're giving, stylistic differences.
So now, how do you translate training to the staff in bite-sized pieces that they can understand and take to the table versus training collectors or end users? That's a different game, It
is a different game. So instead of trying to educate them on things that I like, I try to find out what they like or what they want to find out. Let's say that all that they know is California, but man, they had some stuff from New Zealand lately that was pretty cool, and they liked it. All right, so let's try some stuff there. And if you like California and you like New Zealand, maybe we should look at Australia. Maybe we should play with some things down in South America, and stylistically pick similar things. So new world things that are not in the United States. Or they say, we want to try anything. Well, anything doesn't mean show up with, dry ferment from Hungary. It means show up with maybe a Sauvignon Blanc that has oak on it, and they're not used to that style of wine, but they really love Chardonnay that has oak on it, and they really love Sauvignon Blanc. Now, maybe they'll like that, but maybe they won't. But I think it's all about really trying to figure out their preferences and getting close to that. And I would hope that 20 plus years as a sommelier will give me the ability to understand wines, of a feather.
I think also, guests, they don't get too hung up on barrel regimes and, viticulture details and stuff that we tend to geek out, but they love the stories. And so if you can take those, the personal adventures that you have with vineyards and with wineries and things, and you can carry that to them, they get excited by that.
I think so. That's the beauty of wine. Wine is about the passion and love that the people that make it create. And it's our story, it's their story, but it's our story to share. And we can share our personal stories when we travel, of things that we've had and places we've visited. But at the end of the day, yeah, they want to be connected to the things that they're buying. Very rarely does someone want you just to populate the whole cellar and then they just walk in every now and then and grab a bottle. They want to be connected. Mm-hmm. I recently had a client that outfitted the whole house with art, 14,000 square foot house, and they had some art consultant came in and hung beautiful things. I mean, you walk through the house and it's gorgeous, right? They turned around, they weren't connected to the house anymore, which is kind of sad. I think wine is very much like that. And we all don't like the same things, thank God. Otherwise, we'd all drink dry Riesling.
Right.
But it's about taking the 2 seconds to make that connection and figure out what they like. I think all too often, sommeliers get this wrong. You say, I'm ordering the veal that's wrapped in bacon, it's coming with marbled potatoes, and it has this nice little demi-glace with it. What should I drink with this? And if the sommelier says, I got the perfect thing, I'll be right back, they failed. Mm-hmm. They failed because there's 3 things in a food and wine pairing. And you can call it a food and wine pairing, you can call it a wine relationship. So it's the guest or the client or the customer, it's the wine, and it is what they like.
Exactly.
Or the dish. So if I'm having veal and you don't ask me the wines that I like and you come back with the Rioja, I might like Rioja, or I might hate Rioja. Mm-hmm. And then you just messed up. And if you have to always, always, always think about that third element in putting all those together.
Yeah, I always said the goal was not to find the best wine or the most expensive wine, it's to find the right wine for the table.
It might be a white wine.
Whatever the right wine is for them.
Absolutely.
Is the wine. And then you're going to make the guest happy, and they're going to have another bottle. They're going to trust you more. You're going to deepen that relationship with that person. They're going to come back, and it's just a win-win for everyone.
It's a young mistake a sommelier will make is getting caught up on the food and wine pairing part of it. Wine is about enjoyment, and if someone is going to enjoy their lobster while drinking, a 2009 Bordeaux, but they're so happy, then you've won. You've figured it out.
Well, I'm sure you had that all the time at the laundry where people come in and they just want to have like the greatest bottle of wine and they don't care that it's a scallop dish. They want Latour or whatever.
And you know the laundry menu, right?
Yeah.
It's white for the first 2.5 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they sit down and after champagne, they're like, you know what, we're really red drinkers. Well, great. I mean, we'll start off with Pinot, and we'll kind of progress up. But red's no problem. Mm-hmm. And if you can not bat an eye and move right into red, then you're good.
Absolutely,
yeah. If you get hung up and really try to convince them that they need to have white, maybe.
Yeah, a lot of Somms tend to get a little combative, I fell in love with this geeky wine, and everyone needs to drink this wine, and I think the key to unlocking is to find something that in their realm of knowledge, they know Cabernet and Pinot or whatever, and say it's a little bit like this, a little bit like that, explain it to them on their terms, and then they can grasp it a little easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's see. Where do we want to go from here? Staff training. So tell us about some of the stories you have from the floor, maybe something exciting with these high-end people.
Yeah.
Something.
Nightmares from the floor. That's a book I'm going to write.
Yeah. We always like to humanize our guests that way.
There's been a few doozies. I'll be honest. Let's see. I've had a bottle of champagne get away from me in service. I was actually opening it for a restaurant owner at the time in St. Louis, and I'm not trying to do anything fancy or new style. It just slipped. I was speed chilling it in an ice water bath. So the bottle was...
Did you have salt in there?
Maybe that could have given me some traction. Right. No, I mean, maybe there was coconut oil all over. I have no idea. But nonetheless, I'm taking the foil off, and it was like 1, 2, 3, 5, loosen the cage, boom. It just fell all the way down to the ground. The cork hadn't come off yet. It hits at like this weird angle, and it ejects the cork, and then it just decides to spin up at about eye level in this pinwheel fashion. It was absolutely amazing to watch because I watched it in slow-mo because I thought my life was in me. And oddly enough, it was right in the lane of traffic, and not one guest got a drip of champagne on them.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, there was nothing left in the bottle.
I had almost the same thing.
On the ceiling.
I had almost the same thing happen at the wine reception at Meadowood. I was talking to someone, and the dressage came off.
Yeah.
And so the thing I was opening against it, it came off, and the bottle went down, and it did the curly pinwheel. But that happens.
It was not fun. Very early on in the laundry, I had the really expensive white burgundies we didn't have cold, right? So someone had ordered a 2004, 2004 Cocherie Merceau Perrier. No, it was Courtin Chardonnay. No, it was like the most expensive one. So $1,700 bottle of wine. I decant it. I put it in a small decanter. I shove it in the ice, and I'm chilling it. But now I need the ice for something else. So I put it in the cooler upstairs, in the upstairs station, and I set it against a bottle, and I hear this crack. And I'm like, I hope that wasn't the decanter. But let me check. And I go to pull the bottle, and I pull it up, and the bottom disc of the decanter stays on the floor, and the whole bottle floods that bottom cabinet there.
It's always the last one you want too, right? Yeah.
We had one more, but going to tell Nico Fanucci that I just broke a $1,700 bottle of wine was not good.
Yeah. No fun. Well, another thing we like to talk about is kind of both ends. We've been talking about taking it to the staff, to the guest, but really when you're in a sommelier role running a program, it's a two-way street. You go upstream and downstream. You go downstream to your guests and take care of your staff and your guests, but upstream, you're working with vendors. You got to source those Courtin Charlemagnes. You got to get your Cocherie. What are some successful techniques you've had as far as building relationships with vendors so that, when those allocations come out, you're the guy that they call?
Well, show up on time to appointments is key. I think all too often, in fact, we were talking about this last night, vendors will make appointments with sommeliers and wine buyers, and they run late, they show up hungover, they trail too long from the last one. I think respecting their time is huge. I don't think you need to taste every week either. I think tasting should be reserved to maybe things that are a little bit more special. I think tasting on a daily basis can really drag you down. So that's when the vendors will actually, prevent you from doing a good job. But they can help you do a good job if you empower them. And you say, look, I'm looking for this, and this, in these price points. Tell me what you got. And you might send that out to a few of them. And the people that come back are the people that deserve your business. And the people that don't, they don't. I think those are some golden words to live by, and just making sure you have that kind of mutual respect between yourselves and the vendors. It'll go a long way for those allocations.
Yeah. I was talking with a friend of ours on an recently, and we were talking about, he said, well, I only work with a certain number of vendors, but when people I work with, I know I'm going to buy from.
Right.
And it occurred to me that there's a transitional point when you taste everything. And then you go to the point where you don't need to taste anything, and you just write it that way. Did you notice that, and how did you notice that transition when you were like, I'm in input mode, and then now I kind of feel I have enough confidence and experience to do that?
I think again, another pitfall as a young sommelier is maybe it's the first time that you've been able to buy wine, and you've got all these people that are sort of waiting on you hand and foot, and constantly wanting to give you alcohol and maybe some baseball tickets and who knows what else. And it's like devil's seed, right? So you need to make sure that you don't fall into that pitfall of thinking that you need to taste everything and that you're going to create the world's best wine list in the world because you personally tasted all of these wines. I think it's more about hitting the numbers, making sure your list is balanced, making sure your list has some cool things that you can geek out about, and other sommeliers can come in and go, hey man, that's cool, you got this Tokai Friulano, let's check it out. Or something that's very mainstream, and then you might be able to find it in the grocery store. And that's going to come in handy when, Bob and Sue come in from Arkansas. They're already freaked out because they're out of their element. They're in fancy Napa or New York or wherever they're at, and they see something on the list that they can wrap their arms around.
Mm-hmm.
They're instantly in a better mood. You've now given them the opportunity to have an amazing night.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it always comes back to it's not about us and our list. It's about the guests and the restaurant.
It's always about the guests.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So, when you write a list, how would you go about starting it out, building it up from scratch?
I think you don't do it by tasting, obviously. I think you do it in reverse. All right, what's my budget? I'm a numbers guy, so I want to write those numbers backwards. All right, let's say I have $100,000. Well, what is my restaurant about? What's the cuisine about? Are we a steakhouse? Are we a fish joint? Then the wine list should be the bookend to the dinner menu. They should make sense. You should be able to pick up the wine list, and by looking at the wine list, just describe or at least extrapolate what you think the cuisine might be, and vice versa. If you have a heavy French tone to your menu, I think the menu should be French. But if you don't, if it's California farm to table, I think the wines need to be California farm to table. I always think that's odd. If you have an Italian, Spanish, whatever it is. So you need to have that cursory theme. You need to have a balance of prices. You need to offer some great regional things. You need to have some killer values on the list. Mm-hmm. Some things that you can point to. Maybe they're $40, $50 a bottle, and they might look out of place because you have $300 bottles of wine or more on the list, but they're wines that you can get behind 100%. It's a great Nerello Mascalese from Sicily, and it's just a killer wine. It's just not expensive.
Right. For me, it's really about you got a markup. Yeah. You can't avoid that. That's coming from above. Every wine on the list has to over deliver its price point, whether it's a $1,000 bottle or a $10 bottle. Right?
Yeah.
So you travel a good bit. You're in restaurants around the country. What are some things you see that are cool out there, that are exciting, that some stuff you'd like to rip off if you were going to do it again, or trends that you think are maybe overblown and, it's time, we've had enough of that kind of stuff?
Well, I think there's a lot of fun stuff going on, and with all the information that's available to us these days via the internet, it's really easy to find out a lot more about wines and to learn from others that you admire in the business. I know that at the laundry, we're always looking for half bottles, so we would look at the half bottle selections of all the other great restaurants in the United States, and more to get ideas and be like, oh, I didn't know they did a half bottle. We're going to reach out to that winery, and we're going to see if we can get some more. But I think all too often, you can get lost in the minutia, and I think if you can kind of pull yourself out and not have that happen, then you'll be good to go.
What about like format stuff? I mean, you see people doing like soil types or by weight or by style. I mean, are they those things that
I've seen someone do it by alcohol.
Okay.
Good friend of mine.
No tree here. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I think. While it can describe the body and the texture of the wine, it's not how I would do it. I think what's cool and trendy out there is kind of doing it by body and style, and these are light and fruity, and these are rich and voluptuous, and I think that works in a lot of formats. For me, I'm old school. I want it broken down by region, and I think you should do it by varietal. The last list that I wrote, I did it by varietal, and then I did Old World, New World section. So, because when you talk about Chardonnay,
sort of like Bouchon, where they're side by side.
Right. So when you talk about Chardonnay and you're recommending Chardonnay to the guest, why wouldn't you have all the Chardonnays together? Because if you have South Africa that's 2 or 3 pages away, you're never going to sell South Africa Chardonnay. So have it all together, New World and Old World. That way you can say, well, these have this stylistic thing, and these have this stylistic thing. Like what plays to you? Oh, you're more in the Old World camp. All right, let's look at all the Old World Chardonnay. But not all the Old World Chardonnay comes from France, right? It comes from other places.
Right.
So I find that to be more enlightening and more intuitive for the guest to navigate. I don't think you should do it by price. When I see the prices just get heavier and heavier as you go down, I don't understand that at all. I think the best way you do it is just by region, and you either do it by alphabetized by the producer, or you do it by body. And this is what we would always do in the Wines by the Glass at the Laundry, and I would do it at subsequent places before that. So let's say that the waiter hasn't been paying attention to all the lineups and everything else, but they know now that the first white wine on the list is the lightest and the heaviest is the fullest. Then they can convey that same message to the guest.
See, now for me, alphabetized seems to lend itself towards seeking for a specific wine, which is kind of contrary to what we really want to do, is have people discover new things. So, you know, maybe by price, you get somebody's comfort zone, they can point to the list, and you're around that area, and you can do it quietly and discreetly and just kind of take them where you want to go. There's so many different ways to do it, and that's what makes it fun. But I think it's making it more guest-centric and making it easier. Sometimes I put little one-liners or something like that to give them a little hint.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all depends on the program. I mean, if you have 2,300 selections, it probably is going to be best to be alphabetized. If it's 120 selections, I think you do it by body.
Yeah, well, that's what gets us. The other thing is like, okay, big list, small list. It seems like we're moving towards smaller, more concise lists. And you know, what do you see as the advantages of those?
I think the advantages of a concise list is you're not carrying a lot of inventory, and these top-end wines. I think all too often people are bringing in wines, even to the top restaurants. I mean, you've got restaurants here in the Valley that are $150 for corkage now. They're not wanting people to bring in wines. So I think you say, all right, look, there's going to be a certain amount of corkage, so I'm not going to weigh down my inventory by having all these expensive things. I'm going to go up to about $500 a bottle, or I'm going to go up to $300 a bottle, and then you just kind of have that beautiful little swath between 50 and 300, and you concentrate on those. You can have a great diversity of wines on your list, and you can keep the overall inventory down.
Seems to me like it encourages experimentation. People can play with more things.
You're moving stuff, too.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
moving.
Well, cool. Yeah, I think we want to go both write lists now. I don't know. I'm kind of like fired up. I love that, you know, pouring over a catalog and, you know, that mental aspect of assembling this collection.
For me, it was the review, and it's not right. Oh, it needs to be this, and maybe we could tweak it there. Like it can. I get lost in the details.
It's a curatorial thing.
It is.
Yeah.
But I think it should be fluid. I think just like a menu should change a little bit with the seasons. Well, that wine list that we talked, that's the bookend to the menu, should constantly be evolving. You should maybe have more reds that appear in the wintertime and less in the summertime. That would be really cool if you could have that ebb and flow.
Absolutely.
You know, feature maybe a Nebbiolo or two when truffle season comes around.
Dry Brachetto.
Dry Brachetto. And then when summer comes along, you've got more crisp white wines.
Perfect. Sounds good. Well, thanks for coming in. This is a great show. Worth the wait to have you in. So definitely
thank you. My pleasure.
An excellent show, and we'll be back next time, the next third Monday of the month in November. Guest to be determined, but it's going to be a good time as always. Thanks for checking it out, and we'll see you next time. Tips of the trade. Thanks. Cheers.